unlimited drama series.
The carburetor was fighting me like everything else in my life lately. Grease under my fingernails, sweat dripping onto the concrete floor of my garage, and the smell of motor oil mixing with the stale beer from last night's six-pack. That's when Sarah burst through the side door like a hurricane in a business suit. "Danny, we need to talk." I didn't look up from the engine block. 23 years of marriage taught me that tone meant trouble. The kind of trouble that starts with, "We need to talk," and ends with lawyers dividing up everything I'd worked for. Can it wait? This 92 Camaro isn't going to fix itself, and Mrs. Henderson needs it back tomorrow. Sarah threw her leather purse onto my workbench, scattering socket wrenches and shop rags. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled despite the humidity, her makeup flawless even after a 12-hour day at the law firm. She looked like success. I looked like I'd been wrestling with automotive parts all day, because I had. "Danny, look at me." I set down my wrench and turned around, wiping my hands on an old towel. Sarah stood there in her power suit, arms crossed, that look in her eyes I'd seen too many times lately. The look that said I wasn't enough anymore. "I want to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer." Here we go, I thought. She wants a divorce. Or maybe she's already filed, and this is her way of breaking it to me gently. My stomach twisted into a knot. "What is it, Sarah?" She took a deep breath, like she was preparing for a big courtroom argument. "I want you to let me have an affair." The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline or the "just kidding" that never came. "Come again?" "I want to have one night. One fantasy night with someone else before we—" She gestured vaguely between us. "Before we decide what comes next in our marriage." I laughed. Actually, laughed out loud. "You're serious. Dead serious. Think about it, Danny. We got married when we were kids. I was 19, you were 21. I've never been with anyone else. And lately, things between us have been what? Stale, predictable. We're like roommates who occasionally have sex." The knot in my stomach tightened. She wasn't wrong, but hearing it out loud felt like getting punched in the gut. "So, your solution is to go sleep with some other guy?" "Just once. Just to get it out of my system. Then, we can work on us with a clean slate." I turned back to the Camaro, gripping the edge of the hood. And what if I said no? Then I'd probably do it anyway and lie to you about it. At least she was honest. I had to give her that. Sarah had always been direct, even when it hurt. It's what made her a good lawyer, and apparently, what was about to make her a cheating wife. "Who is it?" "What? You didn't just wake up this morning and decide you wanted to cheat. You've got someone in mind. Who is it?" Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Does it matter?" "It does to me. Brad Kellerman." Of course it was Brad Kellerman. The guy who owned half the commercial real estate in town, drove a BMW, and still had all his hair at 45. The same Brad Kellerman who'd been sniffing around Sarah at every Chamber of Commerce event for the past 2 years. "Brad Kellerman," I repeated. "The guy who thinks motor oil is something you get at fancy restaurants." "Don't be crude, Danny. I'm being honest. You want to sleep with a guy who's never worked a day with his hands, who inherited his daddy's business, and who probably doesn't even know how to change a tire. This isn't about comparing you to him, isn't it?" Sarah sighed and sat down on an old milk crate I used as a stool. For a moment, she looked less like the successful attorney and more like the 19-year-old girl I'd married. "I love you, Danny, but I need to know what else is out there. I need to know if what we have is real or if it's just comfortable." I wanted to be angry. I should have been furious. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of feeling like I wasn't good enough. Tired of watching Sarah climb the social ladder while I stayed in the same garage, fixing the same cars, living the same life day after day. "Fine. Fine? You want your fantasy night? Go have it, but I have conditions." Sarah's eyes widened. She'd expected a fight, tears, maybe me begging her to reconsider. She hadn't expected me to negotiate. "What conditions?" "First, you tell me when and where. I don't want any surprises or lies." "Okay." "Second, you use protection. I'm not interested in catching whatever Brad might be carrying around." "Danny, he's not." "Third, you give me your phone and your credit cards for the night." "What? Why?" I picked up my wrench and went back to the carburetor. "You want to play single for a night? Then be single. No safety net, no calling me if things go wrong, no using our joint credit card to pay for your hotel room. That's not fair. Fair? I looked at her over the engine. You just asked me to let you cheat on me and you're worried about fair? Sarah stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Fine. When do you want to do this? Tonight. Tonight. But I haven't even talked to Brad about... You've been planning this for weeks, Sarah. Don't insult my intelligence. Call him. Set it up. Get it over with. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Maybe she was. You're different. Maybe I'm just tired of being predictable. Sarah picked up her purse and headed for the door. At the threshold, she turned back. Danny. Yeah? Thank you. After she left, I sat in the quiet garage, listening to the tick of cooling metal and the distant hum of traffic. Then, I walked over to my toolbox and pulled out a small black device from behind my socket set, the GPS tracker I'd bought 6 months ago when I first suspected Sarah was having an affair. I'd never used it, never had the courage to confirm what I already knew. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was going to find out exactly what Sarah's fantasy looked like. And then I was going to show her what mine looked like. I smiled for the first time in months. Sarah left the house at 7:30, dressed in a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. She'd showered, done her hair, and put on the expensive perfume she usually saved for special occasions. Watching her prepare for another man felt surreal, like I was an actor in someone else's play. You look beautiful, I told her as she checked herself in the hallway mirror. She turned, surprised. Thank you. Have fun. Danny, don't. Just go. She kissed my cheek, a quick peck that smelled like lipstick and betrayal, then walked out the front door. I watched from the window as she got into her Honda Accord and backed out of the driveway. The little red dot on my phone's GPS app started moving immediately. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then climbed into my pickup truck and followed the digital breadcrumbs. Sarah drove across town to the Riverside Inn, the nicest hotel in our little corner of nowhere. It figured. Brad wouldn't take her to some fleabag motel on the interstate. He had a reputation to maintain, even when he was helping married women cheat on their husbands. I parked across the street in the lot of a defunct Blockbuster Video and watched through binoculars I'd borrowed from my neighbor. At 8:15, Brad's silver BMW pulled up to the hotel's front entrance. He stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He was handsome, I had to admit. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who'd never doubted himself or wondered if he was good enough. The kind of guy Sarah deserved, according to half the women in town. Sarah met him at the entrance. Even from across the street, I could see her nervous excitement. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm, let him guide her inside with his hand on the small of her back. I sat in my truck for 2 hours, watching the light in room 237 and thinking about 23 years of marriage. Our first apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbors who fought every night. The miscarriage that nearly broke us both. The slow climb from barely scraping by to middle-class comfort. The gradual drift from lovers to partners to roommates. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe we had become predictable. At 10:45, my phone rang. Sarah's number. Danny? Can you come pick me up? What happened to your car? It won't start. I think the battery died. I almost laughed. Sarah's car was 3 years old with a brand new battery, but she'd left her purse and her jumper cables at home. Where are you? The Riverside Inn, room 237. I'll be right there. I drove across the street and parked next to Sarah. Sarah's Honda. She was standing by the driver's door in her cocktail dress, looking frustrated and embarrassed. Brad was nowhere to be seen. Where's your boyfriend? He had to leave. Early meeting tomorrow. Ah, love him and leave him type. Sarah shot me a look. Can you just help me with the car? I popped the hood of my truck and pulled out jumper cables. As I attached them to Sarah's battery, I noticed her lipstick was gone and her hair was mussed. She looked satisfied in a way I hadn't seen in years. How was your fantasy, Danny? I'm just curious, worth 23 years of marriage? Sarah got into her car without answering. I started my truck and let it run for a few minutes, then motioned for her to try the ignition. Her Honda started immediately because there had never been anything wrong with it. Thanks, she called through her window. Don't mention it. I followed her home, watching her taillights in my rearview mirror and thinking about the look on her face. Satisfied, guilty, relieved. Like she'd finally scratched an itch that had been bothering her for years. Back home, Sarah went straight upstairs to shower. I sat in my recliner with a beer and waited. When she came back down in her pajamas, she looked like the woman I'd married again. Younger, somehow, lighter. We need to talk, she said. About what? About what happens now. I took a long pull from my beer. What do you want to happen now? I want us to work on our marriage. I want to go to counseling. I want to remember why we fell in love. And Brad? Brad was a mistake, a fantasy. You were right. He's not real. Not like you. I nodded like I believed her. Okay. We can try counseling. Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. She came over and kissed me, really kissed me, like she meant it. I love you, Danny. I love you too. She went to bed happy, probably thinking she'd gotten away with it, that she'd had her cake and eaten it too, that we'd go to counseling and work things out and live happily ever after. I stayed downstairs until midnight, finishing my beer and planning. Because Sarah had made one crucial mistake. She thought I was the same predictable guy who'd let her walk all over him for years. But predictable Danny would have never put a GPS tracker in her car. Predictable Danny would have never followed her to the hotel. And predictable Danny would have never taken pictures of her and Brad entering room 237 together. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos. Crystal clear shots of Sarah and Brad, time-stamped and geotagged. Evidence of adultery that would hold up in any divorce court in the state. Sarah wanted to work on our marriage. That was sweet. But first, I was going to work on my revenge. 3 days after Sarah's fantasy night, I was under the hood of a Ford Explorer when my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Coffee shop on Main Street. 1 hour, come alone. A friend? I stared at the message, wiping grease off my hands. In 23 years of living in the same small town, I'd never received an anonymous text. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. The coffee shop on Main Street was busy with the lunch crowd. I ordered black coffee and found a corner booth, scanning the room for anyone who looked like they might have sent the text. After 10 minutes, a woman slid into the seat across from me. Jennifer Walsh, Sarah's best friend since law school, maid of honor at our wedding, godmother to the daughter we never had. She looked nervous, glancing around like she expected someone to be watching. Thanks for coming, Danny. What's this about, Jen? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Sarah and Brad Kellerman entering the Riverside Inn. Same night, same angle as my pictures, but taken from a different location. You followed her too? Jennifer shook her head. I was there first. What? Danny, Sarah didn't just decide to have an affair. This has been planned for months. Brad's been working on her, telling her she deserves better, that she's wasting her life with a mechanic. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Why are you telling me this? Because I care about you, and because Sarah's not the friend I thought she was. Jennifer leaned forward, lowering her voice. 6 months ago, Sarah asked me to help her find a reason to leave you. She wanted dirt, gambling, drinking, cheating, anything that would make her look like the victim in a divorce. Did you find any? Of course not. You're the most honest man I know. So Sarah decided to create her own reason. The affair. Not just the affair. She's been documenting everything, Danny. Every argument, every time you've been late for dinner, every time you've fallen asleep watching TV. She's building a case that you're an inattentive husband who drove her into another man's arms. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Why? Money. Brad promised to take care of her legal fees and set her up in a nice apartment. All she had to do was make the divorce your fault. Jennifer showed me another photo on her phone. Sarah and Brad at a restaurant 3 weeks ago, heads close together looking at documents spread across the table. Divorce papers? Drafted and ready to file. She's been planning to serve you next week. I stared at the photo, trying to process what I was hearing. The woman I'd loved for half my life had been plotting to destroy me for months. The fantasy night wasn't about exploring her sexuality. It was about gathering evidence for court. There's more, Jennifer said. Brad's not just helping her out of the goodness of his heart. He's been buying up properties around your garage. Once Sarah divorces you and you can't afford the rent increases, he'll swoop in and buy your building too. Son of a bitch. They're planning to ruin you, Danny, professionally and personally. I finished my coffee, mind racing. Why are you helping me? Jennifer's face hardened.
He texted at 2 a.m. Leave the door unlocked. You left our door unlocked for him?
Once it was
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Because Sarah tried to recruit me as a witness. She wanted me to testify that you've been emotionally abusive, that I've seen bruises on her arms. That's a lie. I know it's a lie. But Sarah said it would be my word against yours. And who would the jury believe? A successful attorney or a mechanic with grease under his fingernails? What did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. Then I started following her to see what other lies she was planning. Jennifer pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. Everything's in there. Photos, recordings of phone calls, copies of the divorce papers. Enough to prove she's been planning this for months. I opened the envelope and flipped through the contents. Photos of Sarah and Brad at restaurants, hotels, his apartment. Transcripts of phone conversations where they discussed their plan to frame me as an abusive husband. Bank records showing Brad had been paying for everything. This is enough to destroy her in court. That's the idea. I looked at Jennifer, really looked at her. She was attractive in a quiet way, with dark hair and kind eyes. The kind of woman who'd stand by her friends through anything, until those friends tried to make her an accomplice to perjury. What do you want in return? Nothing. Just promise me you'll use it. I will. Jennifer stood up, then paused. Danny? Sarah's not the woman you married. I don't know when she changed, but she's not coming back. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, going through the evidence. Photos, recordings, financial records, enough to prove Sarah had been planning to frame me for abuse and steal everything I'd worked for. The funny thing was, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was impressed. Sarah had played the long game, recruited allies, covered her bases. She'd thought of everything. Everything except the possibility that her best friend might grow a conscience. I drove back to the garage and locked the envelope in my safe. Then I called my lawyer, not some high-powered firm like Sarah worked for, but a guy I'd known since high school who specialized in divorce cases. Tom? It's Danny Martinez. I need to file for divorce. Jesus, Danny, I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. I'm not. What grounds? I smiled, looking at the photos spread across my desk. Adultery. And I've got proof. Sarah served me with divorce papers on a Thursday morning, right in front of Mrs. Henderson and her grandson. She walked into my garage wearing her best courtroom suit, flanked by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Danny Martinez? That's me. You've been served. The process server handed me the papers and bolted for the door, like he expected me to start throwing wrenches. Mrs. Henderson grabbed her grandson's hand and hustled him outside, muttering about young people these days. Sarah stood there watching me read the papers, probably expecting me to break down or beg her to reconsider. Instead, I laughed. Irreconcilable differences? That's the best you could come up with? It's clean, Danny. No one gets hurt. Right, just like your fantasy night was clean. Sarah's composure cracked slightly. We agreed to move past that. We did, but apparently you didn't. I walked over to my toolbox and pulled out my own manila envelope. Sarah's eyes widened when she saw it. What's that? Counter papers, filed yesterday. I handed her the envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers, scanning the legal documents inside. Her face went white. Adultery? Danny, you can't prove... Page 3. She flipped to the photos. Sarah and Brad at the hotel. Sarah and Brad at restaurants. Sarah and Brad at his apartment, the night before she served me with papers. You followed me. I didn't have to. You're not as careful as you think you are. Sarah sank onto my milk crate stool, still staring at the photos. Danny, we can work this out. We don't have to destroy each other. Destroy each other? Sarah, you've been planning to destroy me for 6 months. What are you talking about? I pulled out Jennifer's envelope and spread the contents across my workbench. Phone transcripts, bank records, copies of her real divorce papers, the ones that painted me as an abusive husband. Page 12 is my favorite. The part where you and Brad discuss planting bruises on your arms and claiming I hit you. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Danny, I never... You never what? Never planned to commit perjury? Never planned to frame me for domestic violence? Never planned to steal my business? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Sarah? You'd lie about me hitting you, take half my assets, and ride off into the sunset with Brad, while I lose my business and my reputation. Sarah started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of a plan falling apart. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The partners at my firm, they expect a certain lifestyle. I can't be married to a mechanic forever. So, you decided to destroy the mechanic instead of just leaving him. I needed a reason that wouldn't hurt my career. And framing me for abuse wouldn't hurt your career? Domestic violence victims get sympathy. Women who leave their husbands for richer men get judged. I stared at her, finally seeing the woman she'd become. Calculating, cold, willing to destroy an innocent man to protect her image. Get out! Danny, please! Get out of my garage. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Sarah stood up, clutching her purse like a lifeline. This isn't over. Yes, it is. She walked toward the door, then turned back. You'll never find anyone else, you know. What woman wants a man who spends his days covered in grease? I'll take my chances. After she left, I called Tom, my lawyer. She took the bait, served me with the fake papers. Good. That proves premeditation. How did she react to your countersuit? Like a woman who just realized she's been outplayed. Danny, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go nuclear on this? We could still negotiate a quiet settlement? I looked around my garage. 20 years of building a business from nothing. 20 years of honest work. 20 years of providing for a woman who was planning to destroy me. Tom, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Okay, then let's burn it all down. That evening, I was cleaning up the garage when Jennifer stopped by. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping. How did it go? Sarah served me with papers this morning. I served her right back. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She tried to deny everything, then tried to negotiate, then threatened me. Jennifer nodded. That sounds like Sarah. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really help me? And don't say it was just because Sarah wanted you to lie in court. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, looking at her hands. Because I've been in love with you for 15 years. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I set down the wrench I'd been holding. Jen, I know. You were married to my best friend. I never said anything, never acted on it. But watching Sarah plan to destroy you, I couldn't stand by and let it happen. What about your friendship with Sarah? What friendship? She was willing to make me an accessory to perjury. She never cared about me any more than she cared about you. Jennifer stood up, smoothing down her skirt. I should go. Jen, wait. She turned back, hope flickering in her eyes. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. After she left, I sat in the quiet garage, thinking about the last week. My wife had tried to frame me for domestic violence. My wife's best friend had saved me and confessed her love. My 23-year marriage was over, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The divorce proceedings turned into a bloodbath. Sarah's high-powered law firm dropped her when the evidence of her planned perjury came to light. Brad Kellerman suddenly became unavailable when subpoenaed to testify about their affair. Jennifer's recordings and photographs made it impossible for Sarah to claim the moral high ground. But the real revenge came 3 months later, at the annual Chamber of Commerce dinner. I'd never attended before. It was Sarah's thing, her chance to network with the town's elite. But this year, I bought a ticket and rented a tux. Jennifer agreed to be my date. The dinner was held at the country club, the same place Sarah and I had our wedding reception 24 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me as I walked into the ballroom with Jennifer on my arm. Sarah was there, of course, sitting at a corner table with a few colleagues who'd stuck by her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The divorce had cost her the house, half her savings, and most of her social standing. Turns out, people don't like women who frame their husbands for domestic violence, even in a town where image is everything. Brad Kellerman was notably absent. Word around town was that his real estate empire was crumbling after several of his shady deals came to light during the divorce proceedings. Amazing how much dirt you can dig up when you know where to look. I made my way through the crowd, shaking hands with people who'd never given me the time of day before. Funny how being the wronged party in a scandalous divorce makes you suddenly interesting to the country club set. "Danny!" Mayor Patterson clapped me on the back. "Hell of a thing what Sarah tried to pull. Glad you came out on top." "Thanks, Bob. You know, my wife's been having trouble with her Mercedes. Think you could take a look?" 6 months ago, Bob Patterson wouldn't have trusted me to wash his car, much less repair it. Now, he was practically begging for my services. Sarah's fall from grace had been my unexpected rise. The evening's program included the usual boring speeches and awards, but I'd arranged for a special presentation, something the Chamber of Commerce Board had been happy to approve once they learned the details. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, "we have a special recognition tonight. The Chamber of Commerce Integrity Award goes to someone who exemplifies the highest standards of honesty and ethical behavior in our community." I stood up from my table, straightening my tie. Across the room, Sarah's face went pale. "Danny Martinez, owner of Martinez Auto Repair, has shown remarkable grace and dignity in the face of personal adversity. When others tried to destroy his reputation with false accusations, Danny chose to respond with truth and evidence, rather than anger and retaliation." The applause was thunderous. I walked to the podium, accepting the Crystal Award from the mayor's wife. At the microphone, I looked out at the crowd. Business leaders, lawyers, doctors, all the people who'd once looked down on the mechanic with grease under his fingernails. "Thank you for this honor," I began. "I've learned a lot about integrity over the past few months. I've learned that it's not about being perfect. It's about being honest, especially when honesty is difficult." I paused, letting my eyes find Sarah's table. She was staring at her plate, unable to meet my gaze. I've also learned that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who test our integrity the most. But I believe that how we respond to those tests defines who we really are. More applause. I could see people nodding, thinking about their own relationships and challenges. In closing, I want to say that integrity isn't just about personal relationships. It's about how we treat our customers, our employees, our community. It's about doing the right thing even when no one is watching, and especially when everyone is watching. I raised the Crystal Award. "Thank you again for this honor. I promise to live up to it every day." The standing ovation lasted for 2 full minutes. As I walked back to my table, people stopped me to shake my hand, pat my back, tell me how much they respected what I'd been through. At my table, Jennifer squeezed my hand. That was perfect. "Think so?" "I think Sarah got the message." I glanced over at Sarah's table. She was gone, her chair empty, her colleagues looking embarrassed. She'd slipped out during the applause, unable to face the room full of people who now saw her for what she really was. After the dinner, Jennifer and I walked out to the parking lot together. The night air was cool, full of the promise of autumn. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I go back to fixing cars and living my life. And us?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. Jennifer had been my rock through the divorce, my evidence gatherer, my conscience when I wanted to sink to Sarah's level. She'd risked her friendship and her reputation to save me. "What do you want to happen with us?" "I want to see where this goes. But only if you're ready. I don't want to be your rebound." I thought about it. Was I ready? 3 months ago, I'd been a married man, living a predictable life. Now I was divorced, vindicated, and free to make my own choices. "I'm ready." Jennifer smiled, the same smile that had been lighting up my garage for the past 3 months. "Good." I kissed her there in the parking lot of the country club. under the same stars that had witnessed my wedding reception 24 years ago. But this kiss was different. It tasted like new beginnings and second chances. As we drove home, I thought about Sarah, probably sitting alone in her apartment, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. She'd gambled everything on a plan to destroy me, and ended up destroying herself instead. The mechanic with grease under his fingernails had won. The successful attorney had lost everything. Sometimes justice comes in the most unexpected packages. Jennifer squeezed my hand as we pulled into my driveway. No regrets? None. And I meant it. Sarah had wanted to trade up, to find someone better than the predictable mechanic she'd married. Instead, she'd lost everything and given me something I'd never expected to find again. Love, real love, with someone who'd seen me at my worst and chosen to stand by me anyway. Sarah had been right about one thing. We had become predictable, but she'd been wrong about everything else. Sometimes predictable isn't boring, sometimes it's just honest, and sometimes the best revenge is simply living well.